Duke it's an open appointment from Duke to make. So that would mean, well, Ben's here, so you have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Welcome. I hereby call to order the meeting, the April 5th meeting of the BHPCC. Thank you everybody for making it here on such a beautiful day. And my name is Michelle Myers. My pronouns are she, hers. I want to acknowledge that we are on the historic land of the Cherokee people, and that we're doing our best to do this work in a way. And my in-laws just arrived. I would love to just go around quickly and do a small icebreaker. It is spring. Spring is sprung. It is beautiful. And what is your favorite thing about spring? I'm a gardener, so I just love getting some seeds in the ground and as they start to sprout. And we'll just go around round robin. If you could just popcorn style. So I'm going to popcorn Jeffrey.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my favorite thing about spring I used to be a good gardener, and now I have a 2-year-old, so I'm not a good gardener, but my neighbors are, and I benefit from the bounty of their garden. So very excited and looking forward to all the things that'll be growing up in the neighbor's garden. Oh yeah. I guess I'm supposed to call on somebody. Dave.
Yeah, I'm also a gardener, and my favorite thing about this time of year is watching my totally brown front yard, which has no grass in it, turn into a carpet of wild violets, purple and green. Whoops, my turn. How about Ben?
Thanks, Dave. Hey, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Yes, beautiful day outside today. Had a nice time walking to my lunch. That was the only time I was really outside. But my favorite my favorite part of this season is getting outside and playing tennis and disc golf. Love both of those things and try to do them pretty often. And I will kick it to Clary. What's up, Clary?
Hi, y'all. I am another thing that comes with spring is colds. I have one. Sorry for how I sound. A favorite thing about spring for me is that ability to relax outside again, right? Just be and so comfortable. And I am going to call on Ken.
Thanks, Clary. While I am a gardener, I will say the favorite thing right now about today is that I have a client in Bismarck, North Dakota, where there's a blizzard warning and the temperature is going to be, I think, below 0 by the end of the day. So I guess my favorite thing about today is the fact that I am not in Bismarck, North Dakota. So I will call on Brad.
Just being able to walk without a coat on and just having not too cold and not too hot. To me, that's the perfect thing. And I'll call on Hannah.
Hey y'all. Yeah, probably just reiterating what others said. Lately I've been really enjoying sitting on my porch. If I'm not going for a hike or a walk or something, yeah, just relaxing on my porch and winding down at the end of the day. I will pick on Summer.
Yeah, I'm a first-time homeowner in my new house for the very first spring. So I'm kind of learning how to do things to my house that need to be done in the spring. And I'm trying to look at it as a good thing. So I'm going to say that the learning opportunity is my favorite part so far. I'll call on Steffi.
Yeah, I guess just being outside is my favorite thing. As you can see, I'm sitting in my shed because I live in a very tiny space. So feeling the breeze and having the sun. Vitamin D is always a good thing, and starting to grow my first garden. I'll call on Seth.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Apologies for being a little late. If I have picked up on things well enough, one of my favorite things about right now is that it's no HVAC season. But I love those blooms too. I love dogwood and azalea season. And let me see. Oh man, you guys might have to help me on who to pick on because I think I missed like half of these. But how about I'll pick on whoever raises their hand who hasn't gone yet. Go for it.
It's Dave Gordon. Hi, everyone. I think that my favorite part about this time of year, I'm also a gardener, but I think that one of my favorite things is seeing all the red buds in bloom. And then I learned recently, well, last year, you can eat the red bud blooms and they're delicious. So just picking some of them off as I cruise along and chomping on some of those, and fly fishing because the water's still cold, but I haven't gotten out yet. Ooh, I'm gonna pick on Sam.
Hey y'all, so I'm calling from my parents' house. They live near Pawleys Island. So I was just in the ocean about 15 minutes ago. So one of my favorite things is swimming this beautiful day. And I'm gonna pass it to Nina.
Oh gosh, I didn't know visitors were speaking. My favorite thing is what I like to call porching, which is what I'm doing now, which is sitting out on my porch, enjoying the breezes and the sunshine, and being able to work here is just an extra added bonus. And I will pass it to, well, we're doing guests. Let me introduce you to Michael Puckett.
Hi everyone, first meeting, so great to meet you all. Summer, I'm a year ahead of you in terms of home ownership, so we discovered a bunch of fun blooms in our garden last year, and I'm looking forward to seeing them all again this year and enjoying some porch time. I also joined a couple of minutes late, so I'm not sure who hasn't spoken yet. Can anyone?
I think you rounded us out, Michael, as far as I can tell. Thank you. Well, nice to meet some of you, and thanks for that. I learn a little bit more about everybody each time. Dave likes to fly fish. That's cool. Can I have a volunteer to be timekeeper, please?
I'm taking notes, so I can do that as well.
Thank you. And I think we're actually on time-ish. I think we can do it. Let's go ahead and I'm going to ask for an approval of the March minutes. If anybody wants to look at them, there's a link in the agenda. If you weren't there, feel free to abstain.
I'll move that we approve them.
Thank you so much, Dave. All in favor? You can raise your hand or put something in the chat. Anybody opposed or have any amendments to the March minutes? Seeing none, minutes approved. We're doing something a little different to save time for this meeting and hopefully going forward. So staff have in advance prepared us a report on fundraising, Energy Savers Network, neighbor to neighbor, and home energy chats. So there's a link in the agenda. Take a look at it. If you have any questions, that's totally fine. And if there's ever anything that seems like you really want to talk about it from any of those programs, staff, feel free to ask to be actually on the agenda. But going forward, just to leave time for discussion, we're going to keep those as written reports unless there is a conversation that needs to be had. Okay. David Erb has prepared a PowerPoint presentation for us on transportation. What should we call them? Truths. That's what you're calling them. So just some ideas to keep in mind when we're looking at transportation policies and looking at our carbon reduction and clean energy goals for transportation. So Dave, we're starting 2 minutes early, so you get 2 extra minutes for your prepresentation. Dave asked me for 30 minutes. I told him we could have 10. So he's squeezed a lot into a little bit.
If you'll just hang on just a second here. Okay. So there it is. Oops, I'm sorry, I bounced myself out of it. Okay, so I want to start with a little context, but my real purpose is to challenge two notions that are really broadly held and that just aren't supported by fact. And so I don't think we're going to have any time for Q&A today, but I'm going to ask you, if you're one of those people who holds those views really strongly to the point where you want to just dismiss me as some kind of a heretic and ignore me totally, please don't do that. Please, let's have a discussion offline some other time. I've spent 40 years studying reams of data which make it real clear that we need to do four things. First off, we need to reduce our demand for motorized travel. The second thing we need to do is to match our vehicles to their loads better than we presently do. The third thing is to electrify the powertrains of our vehicles as much as the vehicle mission allows us to do. It's driven by the mission, not the vehicle. And finally, since most of our missions are going to lend themselves to high levels of electrification, we need to green the grid. Now, most people are probably still in agreement with me. We run into trouble when we try to move forward from here because these notions pop up that just aren't supported by facts. So I'm going to state two truths, knowing full well there's probably people on this call who don't want to believe me. The first is that cars move people more efficiently than transit moves people. And the metric that matters there is energy intensity. If you look at a Prius, it gets 50 miles per gallon. You can say that means it consumes a 50th of a gallon per mile. And if you account for the energy in that gallon of gasoline, you can say it consumes 674 watt hours of energy per vehicle mile traveled. But VMT, vehicle miles traveled, is still 2 steps removed from that demand for motorized travel that we're trying to reduce. And so we need to account for the seats in the vehicle and for the load factor, which is our success in filling those seats. And when we do that, we can say that if the Prius is carrying only its driver, it's consuming 674 watt hours per passenger mile traveled. And if it's carrying a 4-person carpool, it's consuming 168 watt hours per passenger mile. Now, transit buses in the US consume 1340 watt hours per passenger mile on average. Personal cars and light trucks consume 844. And if you look at Asheville, we're probably pretty close to this number on the personal cars and light trucks, but I guarantee you we're nowhere near this number on the transit buses. That transit number is driven by the big fleets in the major metros, and they have significant advantages over us in terms of the efficiency they can achieve. The fact is, we don't put transit out there for reasons of vehicular efficiency. We do it in major metros for land use reasons, and we do it in most American cities because it's the most cost-effective way we have of getting people who can't drive to all the places they need to go in order for society to function. And so if those of us who can drive will get on that bus that's already out there, we're riding for free. But whenever we're talking about expanding transit, we need to recognize it only has an environmental benefit if it reduces the passenger miles traveled demanded enough to offset the higher energy intensity. The value of transit-oriented development is not the transit, it's the dense, walkable, multi-use, mixed-use development pattern that it fosters. So moving on from there. All 4 of those steps that I showed represent progress, no matter if you take them one at a time or all together, no matter what order you take them in. But there's a narrative out there that's pretty strong that says that EVs are just coal-fired cars with longer tailpipes, and therefore we shouldn't promote EVs until after we've greened the grid. That needs a much better discussion. But we need to recognize that anytime you're discussing vehicle emissions, you're really having 2 discussions. The first one is about criteria pollutants, which are the noxious emissions that we've been regulating for about 60 years now. And I'll just make a blanket statement. If the power plant you're charging from is legal, if it meets EPA emission standards, then the EV charging from it is both cleaner in terms of criteria pollutants and uses less primary energy than the conventional vehicle plus its fueling infrastructure. That conversation has basically been over and settled for honest, informed people for about 30 years now. Greenhouse gas conversation is a little more nuanced, and that's those are the emissions we're talking about when we talk about carbon footprint. There it matters where you charge and when you charge. But people have studied this very extensively, and what I think is the gold standard of those studies comes from the Union of Concerned Scientists. They did a lot of things that are really good. Their methodologies ironclad. They're very transparent about that methodology. You don't have to guess what they did. They tell you in great detail, and they'll even discuss it with you and argue with you and, you know, come to terms with you about if you don't like their assumptions and such. They also chose the right scale. Neither the whole grid nor the local balancing authorities, which we use to control the grid, are the appropriate scale for this calculation. They chose what I think is the proper scale, which is these 20-some subgrids that are shown on this map. And then the one thing I think was just inspired on their part is that the way they chose to display the data, they recognize that fuel economy and greenhouse gas emissions are as perfectly correlated as anything gets in the real world. So after they calculated the greenhouse gas emissions associated with charging an EV, they showed this map in terms of the fuel mileage you'd have to get with a gasoline car to match those emissions. And the color coding, the darkest blue is basically in the realm of the best conventional vehicles. The middle blue is in the realm of hybrids, and the light blue is better than the best hybrid on the market. And so when I say it that way, it's obvious. EVs are pretty good. EVs are definitely an improvement. But this report actually got spun in the media. Probably 9 of 10 articles that I saw about this report spun it in a negative way to say EVs are bad. And I could argue and rant about that all day long, but the only thing I'm going to say today is they missed the issue of time. And this map here was drawn with 2009 data. It was drawn in 2012, but the newest data at the time were 2009. This is what the same study looks like with 2020 data. And there's an added bonus here. The light blue, the best hybrid on the road now gets 59 miles per gallon, not 50. So there's an improvement in here that you don't even necessarily notice until you read the fine print. Here in North Carolina, you'd have to have a 98 mile per gallon gasoline car to match the average EV in terms of its greenhouse gas emissions. That pair of maps covers 11 years. And the more recent of those two maps in a couple of months is going to be 3 years out of date. But cars last for 30 years, and the average car out there is 12 years old. So if you were to buy an EV today, you can't even draw the single map that would best capture its lifetime emissions until you have the data from 2035. The other thing about EVs is they're future-proofed. They automatically get cleaner every time the grid gets cleaner. Even if, no matter when you bought the EV, it's going to get as clean as the grid gets clean. Unlike an internal combustion vehicle, which just starts out dirty and just gets dirtier. Now, those aren't the only, that's not the only set of misinformation that's out there related to electric vehicles. And Drive Electric Earth Day exists for the purpose of dispelling some of this mis and disinformation. It's basically owners of a wide variety of cars, bring them out to a site and talk to people about the actual experience of owning and driving electric vehicles. We're going to do 2 of them in Asheville this year, which is pretty good for a small club. We're having the Hendersonville on Earth Day proper, and we're having the Asheville outlets 8 days later at the here in Asheville. So you can talk to me about more information, or you can look at this driveelectricearthday.org website for more information. And Michelle, I'm going to turn it back to you. Made it with 30 minutes or 30 seconds to spare.
Thanks, Dave. Does anybody have any questions? I know I said no, we may not have time for Q&A, but I felt like I understood what you were saying, and I didn't see it was too controversial. But does anybody have any questions for Dave? I see Ben in the chat saying, what does SRVC
Yeah,
mean?
those acronyms on that map are the names of the various subgrids. They are basically areas of the grid. The grid is really one entity. Okay, in theory, you could run the neon lights in Miami with hydroelectricity from British Columbia, but that's not how it works. We control it at much smaller sub-levels called local balancing authorities. There's about 70 or so of those in the country, but that's too small of a thing because we trade energy across those. They don't all generate everything they need to use within the subgrid or within the local balancing authority. So those things like SRVC, that they're subgrids where it is kind of reasonable to draw a boundary around it because that's where you're trading energy. Did that get your question, Ben?
Yeah, who determines those boundaries?
They're basically a variety of things. Some of them are regulatory entities. Some of them are the RTOs, the regional transmission organizations. Some of them are just the power companies themselves. It's just there are business arrangements there are regulatory arrangements there, but they just kind of fall out that way.
Got you. Is FERC involved?
Yes, absolutely. But I would almost go so far as to say it's more the business arrangements than it is FERC and the like. Brad may have want to weigh in on that. I don't know. Or Dave Gordon. Brad, you're muted.
Just to comment that it looks like other than California and the Northwest, that North Carolina, South Carolina has the greenest grid. Oh wait, New England and New York are upstate or higher, but
yeah,
one of the cleanest.
The Northeast brings just tremendous fractions of its power across from Ontario. It's hydro. And so it was amazing a couple years ago. They closed one coal plant in upstate New York and doubled their effective number on that map.
I know energy policy folks are just really excited about this map. Does anybody have any questions about transit? And I think we do have to move on.
And
If no one, I wanted,
both of
does
those
anybody have any questions
discussions
about transit?
offline. I think it's probably more appropriate, in fact, Michelle, if we just took most of it offline.
Yeah, okay, it seems like people got it though. Dave, thank you for the presentation. And
thanks for letting me do it.
Yeah, of course. All right, moving right along to new business. Exciting, since our last meeting, Jamie and I had a really nice conversation with Aisha Adams, who you guys might recognize. She's part of the Asheville View, just did a DEI training at Lenore Rhine that I think was open to the public. She has a YouTube channel and I think is sometimes on local TV, like actual TV. So kind of a local, I wouldn't say celebrity, but known person who works in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she wants to work with us. So we were thinking that it might be good to do in the July meeting, to do a regularly scheduled meeting on Zoom, but have it be a DEI training. Interestingly, our July meeting is July 5th. So whether it's a DEI training or not, the conversation for the group is, do we want to delay the meeting by a week for July 12th? There are people who I remember are not available for that Wednesday meeting. I think it might be a SACI meeting. Sometimes people cancel the July meeting altogether, but because we do have the opportunity to work with Aisha, I think we should keep a July meeting, but we could reschedule. So that is a conversation for y'all. What do you think? July 5th, are we going to lose everybody? People are going to be up at a lake somewhere. Fly fishing. No, fly fishing's over then because the water's warm, right?
Yeah, I vote to push a week.
I'm agnostic.
I'm going to do my favorite thing, finger voting. If you would like to do it on July 12th, you agree with Ben, I'm just going to have you raise your hand. And if you're agnostic, you can raise your hand for both. How about that? Push a week. Summer does not want to push a week, or do you just don't, you're not voting?
Kira just put in the chat that the Sustainability Advisory Committee is on July 12th from
Yeah,
3 to
but
5, if that
That's
affects
Stacy,
anything.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Just kidding, it's not.
it's canceled for July. Is that what it is?
It's on the 19th.
Okay, well, there's no Stacy conflict. And I think we don't currently have Maggie is on Stacy. So anyway, all right, I think we're pushing a week. Does anybody want to keep it the 5th? Does anyone have strong feelings about wanting to be here on July 5th? Seeing none, I think we're gonna move with July 12th. All right, I will let the scheduler know for Aisha, and I think it's gonna be a nice DEI training. She has lots of experience and is happy to do it on remotely and happy to do it in an hour, which is great because I've been to some of these things and it never takes an hour. So I don't know if she's magic or something. I don't know. Next we have I'm gonna turn it over to Ben. We had a nice presentation from someone from the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association about Green Source Advantage. And I think what the next proposal is for Green Source Advantage that's currently in front of the NCUC. We didn't really have time for discussion. This is actually in our 100% plan. Green Source Advantage is like one of the strategies to meet our goals. But there were some concerns that were brought up. So I wanted to have that conversation as a group about how we may or may not choose to pursue Green Source Advantage with some of our larger users. I think that's a pretty good intro. Ben, do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. I'm going to share my screen. Give me just 1 second. All right, are y'all looking at my presentation? No, you can't see that?
No.
Let me try again. Now, okay, cool. So yeah, before I jump into GSA, I just wanted to kind of give some context for what we're talking about here. Obviously, the goal of this group is to achieve 100% clean energy by 2042 for Buncombe County. So important in that process is figuring out where we are now. So this is an ongoing process that I'm working with NCSEA, the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association, on. I know that they probably have the best records of all of the renewable energy systems in the state. They keep track of this regularly through the NCUC interconnection data. So they know all the projects that are in the state, residential, like anything that gets interconnected to the grid, they are able to add it to what they call their renewable energy database. So I was able to get some high-level numbers from one of my friends that works there, and we're hoping to drill down more on these numbers and get a better inventory. But for all intents and purposes, we can go ahead and discuss what we know now, which is that the total capacity of renewable energy in Buncombe County today is about 33 megawatts. So, you know, that's a good amount. It's not, you know, very close to where we, you know, want to trend towards in terms of getting to our goal. And our goal is generally, I think about it in terms of 2.5 to 3 gigawatts. Cadmus said 2.5 gigawatts. It's probably more like 3 when you consider other factors. And then one thing that I'll say too is that this doesn't necessarily include Duke's clean energy mix. So that 1% that I've noted on the right may be a little closer to like 2%, but I don't think it'd be much higher than about 2%. So, you know, still pretty ground level with this goal. You'll see obviously the number one source that we have is solar with about 2,500 systems. I believe that only a handful of those are actually utility scale, which is considered at 1 megawatt and above. Most of the systems are residential or commercial. So that's why that number is, you know, the number of systems is high, but the megawatt capacity is not particularly high. And then you can see the other smaller systems that exist around the county. Again, that 33 megawatts is where we currently stand. And in terms of that 2.5 to 3 gigawatt goal, we have a lot of ground to cover. So getting into the Green Source Advantage program. So the Green Source Advantage program is key to our success because it is currently the only way for energy buyers in Buncombe County to procure utility scale energy. So you're talking about large corporate buyers, large institutional buyers like, Buncombe County Schools, or anyone that has a large energy burden. They would be potential candidates for a Green Source Advantage PPA. PPA meaning power purchase agreement. That's a contract over typically 5 to 10 years where the buyer agrees on a set rate for energy that's fixed, typically fixed, and it's dealt with the developer directly. And then just to get a little bit into the weeds, the buyer signs a GSA PPA with the developer, and then the developer signs a typical PPA with Duke. So it's a little bit of a complex contracting situation, but it's not unprecedented. What is unprecedented would be the dynamic in which we would need to make this happen, because typically when you think about Green Source Advantage, what you're talking about is a very, very large corporate or institutional buyer that has a load that can meet the entirety of a solar facility that's, in the process of being developed. So when you think about the history of utility scale solar in Buncombe County or in North Carolina, the size of the facilities is largely predicated upon the PURPA QF limit, which is a little bit in the weeds, but essentially it limits the size at which the project is contractually obligated to get a power purchase agreement with the utility. And that used to be 5 megawatts in North Carolina. Now it's 80 megawatts. So most all utility scale solar developers are trying to hit with their new projects that 80 megawatt limit. And until that PURPA limit is increased, that's going to be the going rate for all utility scale solar projects in the state. So when you think about, trying to sign a GSA PPA, you're going to need to aggregate about 80 megawatts of capacity, which is a lot of energy. When you think about City of Charlotte, for example, they have a GSA PPA, and I don't believe that's a total of 80 megawatts, but at any rate, it's a large buyer that's able to use all of that consumption in one contract. So yeah, what's unprecedented that we would need to do is that we would probably need to aggregate a few corporate buyers that, are not necessarily related. On the right, you see the list of the top employers in Buncombe County. That's probably a decent indication of who has a high energy burden. So, you could foresee a potential situation where Mission Health, Ingalls, and, we'll say Biltmore would come together and they would aggregate their load for energy usage. And we would try to get that targeted at 80 megawatts. And then that group of energy buyers in aggregate would be negotiating with a developer to sign a GSA PPA directly with the developer. And then that would allow, those companies to be able to claim those renewable energy credits. So, as I mentioned, this is the only pathway for utility scale solar or utility scale power in North Carolina. And until that changes, this is the paradigm that we're in. It's not ideal. It's going to be very challenging to get the first one signed. But I think that once we accomplish that, then it'll hopefully open up the door for more creative GSA PPAs down the road, or, the paradigm may shift and there may be more opportunities for RECs down the road. So I know I've been talking for a while. I do have one more slide, but I'll stop here.
We just have a 2-minute time check reminder. I know that there's another presentation after this one if you're trying to stay on track.
Okay, cool. Well, let me just jump into the next slide, and then I'll stop. So this is like, kind of how I think about how we get to 100%, because we're not going to get to 100% with local generation. That's something that I'm going to be working on, is trying to determine what the potential capacity is for all renewable energy in Buncombe County. But I don't really see a universe in which we can get all of it locally generated to the tune of like 2.5 gigs. That's just, with solar, that's just not really doable. We don't really have the land resources for that, or we don't have the land resources for that. And, there's always conversation about nuclear, but that's not really in the picture yet. So at any rate, what you're seeing here is, 2023, we just have the baseline of that 33 megawatts. And then in 2024, hopefully, if not before then, that's when we would sign the first, or someone in the community would sign the first GSA PPA to credit energy to Buncombe County. So that's 80 megawatts. It bumps us up there. You see that's kind of the clip that we need to be operating at to sign like 1 GSA per year. And then in the ones that you see an asterisk, those are years where we sign 2 GSA PPAs, because if we were just to do 1 per year, it wouldn't get us to where we really need to be. And even if this is like a best case scenario, at the top, at 2042, we've netted 2,250 megawatts of RECs. And then if you consider what the local generation capacity is on top of that, you're probably looking at maybe close to 3 gigawatts, which I think would allow us to hit our goal. I know I'm at time, so I'll pause there, but that's the way that I think about GSA. It is, again, the only way we can get renewable energy in utility scale fashion. So I think it's really important that we think about how we can move the ball on this and potentially get a GSA PPA signed in the community in the next year or so.
Thanks, Ben. That was a really thorough presentation. I appreciate it. I would like to get us to a point where we're actually able to kind of have, I don't know if debate is the right word, but a real conversation about this as a strategy. And I don't want to rush it. So I think I'm going to put this back on the agenda for next meeting, just a discussion. So we'll probably put these slides up again, not even run through them in as much detail. Does anybody have any burning points or questions they would like to ask now based on Ben's presentation, without getting into the should we or shouldn't we be doing this conversation? Because I think that's what I'd like to talk about next month. Great. Thank you again.
Michelle, Brad had a question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand, Brad. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was just that 2,500, which is something that the numbers we're looking at in the strategic plan is more like 4,000 to 5,000 is the need. That is based on the Camus report. But the question is 2,500, 4,000, whatever it is, in terms of where we need to be in terms of generation. Ben, have you quantified the amount that we could potentially get from the large employers? What fraction of that would be covered by the large employers in terms of their load being aggregate? Because a lot of residential and commercial, which obviously wouldn't be, and there'll be EV loads, which won't be able to be accommodated. You won't be able to go out and do large scale GSA purchases. Do you have any idea what our capacity is for GSA purchases?
Yeah, good question, Brad. It's hard to say. I mean, I could, give a swag estimate, but I don't really want to do that because I just don't really know. But I'd say that, probably, I mean, if I had to totally guess, maybe like, 20 to 30% of energy buying in Buncombe County is done by large corporate buyers who could potentially be GSA candidates. But what I'll say too is that this is the current paradigm. And I think it's important for us to, work within the current paradigm with the understanding that things will inevitably change. So I think that, Brad, to your point, that right now, residential buyers could not necessarily utilize these, REC dynamics. I think in the future they will be able to, and I think that getting some reps with the GSA power purchasing contracting will allow us to be in better shape and more better poised to be able to handle the developments in the market as they continue to evolve. So I think right now, I think we should work with what we've got, but I definitely think things will change, and I imagine things will probably get easier in terms of procurement.
Just to add one small thing for clarification, Brad was saying that our need is going to be about double of what Cadmus said, and the reason for that is because Cadmus didn't include transportation, which is about half of Buncombe County's energy use. So if we're including transportation, we probably need to double that.
Good to know. All right, thank you. Thank you again, Ben. I really, that was really informative and good questions and asterisks on that presentation. I just want to do a quick agenda check. Are we having a presentation from a guest, or is the next presentation, Hannah, you were talking about the strategic plan presentation that's on the agenda?
I see one that is, yeah, the engagement calendar that has Jamie next to it, but he's not here, so.
Okay, I just want to make sure there wasn't another presentation that I was not, that didn't make it on the agenda. Okay, thanks. Summer, do you want to talk about the engagement calendar? I'm not sure what Jamie was thinking putting it on the agenda, but maybe you might have an idea.
I'm not specifically sure, probably just as a reminder. He's kind of laid out all the ways we could use your help if you'd like to be involved somehow. And we have a couple of events coming up, our Earth Day 5K on April 22nd. And then we're wanting to do Grind Fest, and it's Memorial Day weekend. So we have some staff capacity issues. So if anyone would like to table there, it's a Black Wall Street event. So Jay Hackett is involved. Let me know. There's a PowerPoint linked if you want to see all the opportunities.
Sure.
That's probably it.
I wonder if any of the committee members have any idea of where we could recruit volunteers. So a lot of us are pretty at capacity making these meetings and doing our action items, but to do a tabling event, students are good at it, Sierra Club volunteers are good at it. There's lots of people out there that could be helping us that are mission aligned. So does anybody have any ideas specifically for Grind Fest? Because I think it would be good to be able to add that to the places where we're doing outreach. Does anybody have any ideas?
What's the date for Grind Fest?
Open up that PowerPoint presentation and then it's in there. Memorial Day weekend. That's what Summer said. So
May 27th is the day we signed up for. And there's also Sunday that's open, but we didn't think we'd have enough people to do both. So I think it's like an all day Saturday thing. So there will be multiple shifts available.
Ben, is there an environmental club at UNC Asheville?
There absolutely is.
Yes, there is. And I was just going to say, I've actually gotten a few emails from Dr. Ormsby, who heads their sustainability department. And they have some students who are looking for internships. So that could be a potential way that we could maybe bridge that gap of have that be a part of an internship for students.
Jamie had a description for community outreach intern or something written up at one point. So we can find that when he gets back from vacation and maybe share that with them.
We're running a little bit over, but I want to bring this to an action item. So who is going to follow up with I think it's Dr. I'm not sure, Professor Ormsby, and can we do that in enough time for the Grind Fest?
I actually have a meeting that I a calendar invite that I sent to Sam and Jamie earlier today and have that as one of the agenda items to chat with them about is all these potential internships. So I can follow up on that, try to make something happen.
Cool. All right, Dave, you're actually up next as the keeper of our 100% plan. Dun, dun,
Fun,
dun.
fun. Okay,
right.
so there's a few, I'm gonna just jump into it because I know we're running a little late. So there's a few things on here that I'm supposed to cover. So one is just overview of the process and the structure of the plan. So, and part of the reason why this got brought up is because we do have some new members. So just to kind of bring folks a little bit up to speed. I got hired and came on the beginning of 2021. And this, the strategic plan process was even going on before that. So since I started, we've had the strategic plan committee, and we started by basically trying to create this foundation that we could then build upon. So try to lay out some groundwork, like we have this renewable energy goal. How are we going to define renewable energy? What are we going to include as renewable energy? And just kind of hash out some of those details and sort of build up from there, including like keeping score. What do we, how are we going to, there's all these nitty gritty fine details. So we kind of tried to hash those out first and then build up from there. And I'm going to share my screen, and I apologize I don't have a very visually appealing presentation. But this is coming straight from the strategic plan. So part of it also was just to kind of look at current baseline energy. And that was 2019. So where are we currently? And then look at all the, the three main technical pathways of getting to this renewable energy future, which are really embracing efficiency, electrifying everything, and greening the grid. Then looking at what that future might look like. So, envisioning our future, and then sort of coming back to the present. What are these local priorities, and what are the folks in the community want to see happen? Kind of, how can we use those local priorities to guide those technical pathways? Then we sort of developed this assessment framework for how to analyze and assess both current and potential initiatives of things that, specific action initiatives that might get us there, and then applied that assessment to both current initiatives and, this long list of initiatives that we came up with as potentials for new things that might help us get there. But not just initiatives, policy also has a huge impact, obviously. So weaving that into it, as well as community engagement, and how can we engage the community to do kind of all of the above things that we've talked about. And then just trying to incorporate a process where this is reviewed every so often and updated as new stuff comes out. So that's sort of the very brief overview of the process. For what this thing actually looks like now, go up, 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 up. I'm gonna just bring you straight to the table of contents, and it's long. Okay, so first part of it, we've got this executive summary. Then we kind of get into the process that I just explained to you to give some context, including what those local priorities are that I mentioned, and what are the limitations of this plan. Then we sort of get into key findings. What are the things that we've learned in doing all the modeling and analyzing, et cetera, as well as sort of like a very focused, what can you do as somebody who's reading this plan? What are a few key things that you can do to help get us there, and that would be beneficial to you and to the community as a whole? And then we start getting into sort of some of the nitty gritty fun stuff, some of the good juicy stuff. So we're looking at, we're calling it a whole systems approach that incorporates the new initiative, policy changes, and community engagement, because really all those things can't be successful without each other. New initiatives not going to be successful without community engagement. Community engagement is not going to be successful without new initiatives, and the same for policy, et cetera, et cetera. We need all those things working together in order to get us to this 100% renewable energy goal. Then the plan looks at what our current situation is, successes we've had, current programs going on, what kind of policy achievements have been passed, Part 5 does a deep dive into the technical strategy, but it's just an overview. But it's really just the technical pieces of the modeling and the data and the numbers of how we got everything that we came up with. And then it's sort of this closing of next steps for success. And in that we have sort of the results of all that analysis we did for for potential initiatives and policies. Policies is still, just so everyone knows, it's probably going to be changed a little bit. It's still being worked on. But in that next steps, we have things that basically say, okay, so in the next 1 to 5 years, our near term, these are the things that floated to the top in our analysis, do these. In the next 5 to 10, do these. And then the next 10 to 20, do these. Because part of that analysis was a timeline for those initiatives and policies. And we also talk about funding because a lot of this stuff is going to need funding. That was a lot, I know. So apologize, but that's sort of where we're at with that. The next thing I have up is to do a quick update on the focus group, but does anybody have any burning thoughts, questions, or things they want to share about all that stuff I just talked about?
Dave, I have a question about like what the feedback process is. Like how, I know like you've been taking this to the technical committee, or is that right? The technology group, but like when you send it out to this group, what kind of is this, like high level feedback now and then more details later? What does that process look like?
That's a great question, and something that it sort of weaves well into what I'm about to talk about. So I'm going to sort of talk about it, but if you feel like I didn't answer your question, then please shout out at me. Okay, cool. So yeah, so feedback. I guess maybe what I'll say is that initially going into the plan, we had a lot of, the strategic plan committee did a lot, and we had all the different committees sort of be involved in the creation of it. So tech committee was looking at initiatives that were sort of specifically tech oriented. Community engagement did the community engagement piece of it. So all these different committees sort of helped with the different sections of it, transportation committee, et cetera, et cetera. And the policy task force is working on the policy section. For feedback, we basically did a quick sort of Greenbelt Alliance and a couple of the BHPCC members internal review, which have gone through a few more iterations. And then it got sent over to Dr. Jay Hackett, who created and led a focus group of BIPOC folks in the community. And just as a quick segue, I learned in that process that it is now sort of the most up-to-date way of saying DEI is DEI-A or DEI-B for diversity, equity, inclusion, and acceptance, or diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So just to put that in our brains as a preparation for our training with Aisha. But so that went out to them maybe a few weeks ago, and we just received all the responses and feedback from that. Sam and Jamie are on vacation this week, so we haven't had a time to chat about it too much. But but one thing I did want to share with you about that I feel like is very promising is, and I'm going to share my screen with this so I can show it to you all, is that go back over here. One of the questions that he asked was, let's see if I can find it. Here it is. Was, would you be willing, can you all see my screen? Can folks see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. He said, would you be willing to participate in a quarterly focus group about sustainable energy? And so part of his thinking and sort of the conversations that we had around all of this was also to, try to increase diversity within the BHPCC and the different committees and groups that we have. And so he was sort of suggesting this, and this came up as a great pathway to get more folks involved who are from diverse backgrounds. And there was sort of 10 who said that they would like to be involved in the future and stay involved and continue doing this. So I feel like that's a very promising thing There's a lot of other info in this report that we'll review and sort of report on, but we haven't gotten to it yet. So that's semi-concluded, although there's still some work that needs to be done. And then I guess for the rest of the, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. For the rest of the review process, at this point, that's one of the other things that I think we kind of need to discuss. But we have this potential face-to-face workshop coming up on June 7th. And I think that there's some details that we need to hash out about it. But one of the primary and preliminary asks for part of this feedback process is, before we even get to that face-to-face feedback part, is for you all, the folks in the BHPCC, to think about who within your network might be both knowledgeable enough and willing to give this sort of like a third-party review. Because as you were, I don't know if this answers your question, Jackie, but part of it is, we were the ones creating it, and I'm sure we all have our own biases and things like that. And so I think it's just good to have a third-party review of some other folks who are knowledgeable and experts in their field to take a look at it and make sure that what we have in there looks right, and if not, to let us know. So the ask essentially is to think about people in your network, whether it's individuals or organizations that you might be able to contact, who could look at even just a part of the strategic plan, like if there's a transportation person or organization you want to reach out to, or policy or energy efficiency, any of those kinds of things. Those are the 5, or look at the 5 topics that we analyzed, and maybe that'll help direct it. But so that's one ask. The other piece of it is sort of like I was saying, to get back to the face-to-face workshop. And I think that, one of the big questions is, what do we want to get out of the meeting? And maybe some of that will come from like, what does the BHPCC hope to get out of the strategic plan? And I know that Greenbelt Alliance, like, we have some thoughts of what we want to come from the plan, but if this is becoming sort of like a big, a big achievement for the BHPCC, which I think it should be, my question then to you all is like, what would that achievement serve for? Like, what's the purpose and what do you want to get out of it? So I don't know, maybe that's a conversation that needs to happen at a different time, but I'm
Dave,
throwing
I
it out there.
appreciate the overview of the history here. I think one question I have that might also help is, how many drafts have there been in this plan?
Oh, over 20.
Okay, so you've taken a lot of feedback, is what I've heard.
I have, although it's been from select individuals and sort of more of an internal thing so far.
Okay, and so you have a draft that now is going through review through Jay Hackett's process, or is that concluded?
His focus group has finished their review. He sent back the responses and the feedback earlier this week, Monday.
And are you incorporating that now? Is that like where you are
Yes.
in process? So if it sounds like Jackie has some feedback is what I'm hearing. And so should she send you that feedback, or should she wait until like the next draft or something like that?
I would maybe say wait until the next draft since it's been updated, but if there's general feedback, I would always love to hear it. And then maybe also it would be good to have some additional feedback during that face-to-face workshop. Because one of the things that we talked about, at least in one of the previous meetings, was, does the BHPCC want to review it as it's sort of like going through the process and continuing to change, or get it as completely cooked as possible and then folks review it, so that it's not just like constantly changing? And it seemed to me that the best use of folks' time was to wait until it's at that point where we've gotten all this internal feedback, including the focus group, which is happening now. And then once it's done with that draft, then to share it amongst everyone else and get, that way it's not continually changing, and then get that feedback then.
Great. So I think what we need to say is, because there've been a lot of emails, and I know the strategic planning committee has been meeting. We've been talking about this June 7th meeting, but I don't know that everybody else. So this is an announcement. Hey, everybody, you guys have on your calendar that we're going to be meeting in person on June 7th. And we're going to have food. Jamie's ordered some really yummy food that's like healthy too, which is fantastic. And what we're going to do is a face-to-face review of the strategic plan. So that's an announcement. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if I said it out loud. We were thinking about doing it last meeting. We talked about trying to find a time in May, and that just wasn't going to fit. So we're going to do it at our regularly scheduled meeting. And as Dave mentioned, we know we want to get everybody's ideas, like where we should be getting third-party reviews, and also people signing up for managing that input from third-party people. But we also probably have some additional feedback from the whole group that we'd like to collect on June 7th. So we're thinking about the best way to do that in a group structure. And so if anybody has any thoughts about that, this would be a good time to chime in if you just were like, I've seen this model work really well, or have any ideas on how to get some feedback on a large document. And part of the reason we have Dave here presenting on the structure is just to get some of the big chunks about digesting the plan out of the way in this meeting and the next meeting, so that when we're there, we're really focused on getting to the meat of it and what we can accomplish in the room together. Sam, do you have anything else you'd like to add about that?
Well, Nina just asked a question about will it be open to the public, and my sense is yes. This is a public meeting. We really do want to be able to get specific feedback and focus from the BHPCC members, and we want to have plenty of time to be able to dive into some of these specific initiatives. And I think having folks that are not just sitting on the council there is important as well. So we do want to have it. I'm pretty sure, right, Michelle? I don't know if we've kind of gotten to that level of figuring it out, but as a public body, it's generally like these meetings are open to the public. I don't know how much we'll broadcast this effort, because there will be more community engagement that will come after this council kind of gets into the nitty-gritty details. But any other perspective on that?
I'll just make one more comment. Dave mentioned that we're still trying to figure out what the BHP wants to get out of the strategic plan. And that feels like a very urgent step for me. Or when I'm reading it, I don't know how to read it without that context of what we want to get out of it.
Right, I'll just say, as we were developing, we sort of hope that this will be a way for the BHPCC to really have informed decision-making process going forward about what we focus on, where do we channel resources, where should we allocate staff, time, etc. And so, once it's complete, it's like, okay, we have our priorities list. Let's go through those and let's make them happen with all the, with the city and the county and the BHPCC and GBA and then all the other entities in the community that they're working on this.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, sorry, I guess I wasn't very clear with that. But that was sort of what I was referencing when I was saying there have been some things that I know that we have talked about as a goal already, but I guess if there are additional things beyond that we are hoping to have come from this, then that would be a good time for us to, or now would be a good time for us to talk about that and figure that out. But thank you for asking that, Jackie, and for clarifying. And thanks, Sam, for clarifying.
If I could just add one thing in terms of this question of what do we get out of it, to me, the strategic plan is to be our blueprint for what we do as both an organization and a community moving forward. Obviously, achieving the 100% renewable energy goal or some substantial portion of it is going to be due to many actors. And that's why we said it's many other people. It's not just the members of the people in this room. It's not just people we can reorganize. It depends on policy. It depends on a tremendous amount of community engagement, and it depends on specific initiatives. So, part of what should come out of this is a blueprint for where we go and also how we organize. I mean, I think if we embrace the plan well enough, then the plan should guide how we organize to do this going forward in terms of staffing and in terms of volunteer organization.
Cool. I want to ask anyone who hasn't spoken yet to think about what would you like to get out of a face-to-face session. And when you're thinking about the strategic plan, it doesn't have to be a full thought either. I just want to hear, like, what is that thing that's nagging you about this, that you're like, can we like address this when we're in person? Could we like talk about this? Does anybody have a thought there? Specifically, anybody who is on the BHPCC and hasn't chimed in yet.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, I'm interested in really charting the year by year accumulation of megawatts of renewable energy and factoring in any energy efficiency. So I think about that in terms of like the baseline of what we have now, which is 33 megawatts in the community, and then doing an assessment of sorts to try to determine the total local capacity in the county. So, you know, if we built on every suitable rooftop and suitable ground mount system, what would be the total capacity that we could do in Buncombe County? And then with the baseline plus the total potential, like that's what we can do in the county. And then you take the 3 gigawatts from that and you subtract out what we can do in Buncombe. What you have as the remainder is what we'll need to get through RECs. So charting that progression out to 2042 is what I'm most interested in.
What I would love to see is have Duke come and see how much they're willing to work with us and re-engage in this whole process. There's only so much we can do at this point without Duke. And the fact that Duke is seemingly disengaging from the process is worrisome. I mean, there are other ways we could acquire RECs. There are other things we could be doing, but in an ideal world, we should be partnering with Duke on this, not doing it on our own.
What is the other way that we can get RECs?
We can buy RECs on the open market there are co-ops in North Carolina that aren't under the Duke service territory that have projects that we could purchase RECs from. So there is other territory besides Duke.
Right, but if you're a consumer within Duke territory, you can't purchase a REC elsewhere.
Oh, yes, you can.
I'm gonna table this conversation. I think you can just you can buy energy, you can buy RECs, you just buy them, but you're not like using that energy. You're just buying them on top of your energy to kind of make it feel better. So anybody else want to talk about what getting Duke we'll invite Duke to the meeting. I don't know if we can, in our own bubble, repair the relationship with Duke and get them there, but we can make sure we'll try to get someone from Duke in the meeting. I think that might be good. I'm sure they haven't had all the background on the 100% plan though, so it could also kind of sideline the conversation. So we'll think about that. Does anybody else have any conversations about, or any ideas about what you want to get about the strategic plan? Like what question do you have that you would like to have answered? Maybe that would be a good way to put it.
This is Maggie. I've been on the phone for a minute. Sorry, I'm not on camera with everybody today. I guess as we go through and look at the things that are culminating in this plan, I think it could be very valuable for us after it's done to really have a shared sense of our prioritization of what comes first. That is also connected to our sense of feasibility, because I think that in big plans like this, it's really important to be aspirational and it's really important to be practical. And as a strategic planning consultant, a lot of times I see folks put a lot of work into the plan and then it's hard to get started afterwards. So some sense of us having shared prioritization of where do we go first? Where are we going to get traction first? Where's there feasible actions possible? I think would be really motivating to keep the momentum going after the plan is complete.
Well, I've heard Sam say something similar. So that sounds like a good thing to do in person, is to prioritize kind of a loading order of actions, if I'm hearing you right, Maggie.
Yep.
Cool. Anything else before we wrap up this section? We're going to come back to what to get out of the face-to-face meeting, I think one more time in May, but we're just really trying to hone an agenda that feels really valuable and worth people's time. So I appreciate the exercise.
Can I
Yeah.
Can I just add in, just in case folks haven't seen it, just so you're sort of caught up to speed in what will be in there, not what might. In that analysis of the initiatives, there is a section about feasibility. You know, like how feasible do we think that this is? So just so you know, that's included in there, and you can see that as well.
Thanks, Dave. And thank you for pulling this all together. All right. So we're going to run through subcommittee reports. For these, if you met and there was something that you really need the committee to know about, that's important. We are going to try to go through them a little quickly. So if you met and there's nothing, you're still just, you're grinding away, it's okay to just say we met and we're going to meet again. Keith isn't here, but Dave, I think you were at the transportation committee meeting, right?
Actually, we did not have one this month.
Okay. Great. The policy task force, did we meet? We did meet. Oh, yeah. So Keith and Dave Gordon and Jamie in particular really helped with writing the comments on Buncombe County's comprehensive plan. We submitted those, did not get a reply. There is a doodle poll. There will be another convening of the policy task force this Friday, and then a hold for the Friday after. And we're just going to dig into the 100% strategic plan policy section. There's a lot there, but we want to fine tune it and maybe look at, if there's anything missing that we can do locally. So that's going to be from 2 to 3 o'clock. There's a calendar invite for everybody who said they wanted to participate. If anybody wants to participate in that and isn't on that calendar invite, shoot me an email or a text and I will add you to the calendar invite. And then there is state policy moving on building codes. And I'm going to ask Sam to do a brief overview of it. Some folks said there was a CCL action alert that went out. Looks like about 16% of, building efficiency improvements if these codes went through, but there is some controversy with some trade associations. So Sam, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, there might be some others on the call that also want to chime in on this one. There is a fairly significant threat now to residential construction in the state of North Carolina in terms of overall codes. So it's not just energy efficiency, but it's codes in general. The Building Code Council was going to be updating the energy efficiency part of the code, and with significant lobbying from the Home Builders Association, there was kind of a threat to reduce or eliminate some of that. And around the same time, I don't know how the backdoor channels things work, but there's a new piece of legislation that's been introduced in the House. It's called House Bill 488, and essentially it in some ways deregulates the use of codes in the state. There'll still be a building code, but that entity would be the appointees to that entity will essentially be builders and other professionals in the building community that would be allies of the Home Builders Association, is what I've heard. So there's still a lot of things to be worked out on this. The legislation is still, it's been drafted. It might change, but this is a fairly significant threat to residential energy efficiency. So we are trying to figure out the next best steps, and Citizens Climate Lobby has drafted a letter, and I think others have as well, to basically the next call to action would be to contact state Senate and also House members in our region and across the state with this letter, essentially expressing our desire that the building codes remain strong, and this essentially this residential code council legislation not go forward. So we're going to be working on what is the exact request. We could email out to this group, and then each person kind of forward it to their the folks that we recommend. But there's some other actions we want to take as well, like, social media pushes and op-eds and things like that. But I know that some folks, like Ben Edwards, for instance, on this call has been tracking codes for a long time. And some other people on the call too are kind of engaged in this effort. So anyone else want to add anything else to what I just said, or correct anything I just said, maybe?
Yeah, this is Ben Edwards. I think that more or less captures the issue. So the resistance to updating residential codes has kind of boiled over into this House bill, which is going to create a separate building code council just for residential construction. And so that's why it goes beyond energy. So it would be potentially self-regulating plumbing and electrical and HVAC and everything. And unfortunately, that's now more a part of an even bigger kind of power grab from the legislature. And I'm sure folks will see about where we're talking about removing the administration's authority to run policymaking boards and commissions. But yeah, absolutely. The most important thing we can do is to get in front of it and to just make sure that representatives, senators know that we're watching. I mean, more than anything else, as always, to let folks know that we're watching. And so I'm happy to pick anything up offline. I know that we're short on time, but I think y'all have my email on my contact information if anybody wants to engage further, other details.
Sure. Ben, I have a question. Is there a legislator that would, if receiving a letter from a Buncombe County body, that would be influenced by receiving that letter? Is there a target that we should focus on?
I mean, the representative who has been spearheading most of the attacks on I'll say general sustainability at the Building Code Council has been Representative Brody, but I don't think he's going to care what anybody else thinks. So yeah, I think the main thing is just to get the word out and let people across the state know that this kind of a power grab is just not acceptable. And it's, again, unfortunately, it's not just at the Building Code Council anymore. It's at lots of boards and commissions. So I think that it's kind of one of those things where there's so much chaos that it makes it hard to fight all the fronts. But this is certainly can be used as an example of maintaining a balance of power between the branches of government. So yeah.
To the group, what do you want to do about it, guys?
If I could chime in, because Don couldn't make it today, Don Kraus from CCL, he would like to write an op-ed, and I believe he wanted to work with Sam or BHP or somebody to help him write that, because he's not, an expert on building, but he can definitely help write this for us. And then there is a pre-drafted email from CCL that Annie can send out to our members, but I thought we should wait till this board approved and let her know that that is okay to do. And then one other point I just want to bring up is, apparently these building codes in North Carolina only get changed out every 6 years, whereas in other states they get changed out every 3. And we are now behind the building codes of the states of Florida, South Carolina, and Georgia. And I'm not sure if this is true, maybe Ben could clarify in the draft legislation. I think they wanted to keep that 6-year time frame from changing the building codes so that it wouldn't go to the 3 years, which, is needed to keep up to date. And save people on their, energy bills over time, really. That's what it amounts to. And they're arguing that it's too costly to update the building codes for people when they're building, but in the long term, they save money. So that's the general, I think, argument is the cost argument.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. That 6-year cycle was implemented a few years back, and because we have succumbed to lobbying pressure in past cycles, essentially, we have mostly a code that's based around 2009. And with the 6-year cycle, we continue to have that code if we keep it until 2031. And as I'm sure everybody is well aware, energy burden is absolutely one of the most regressive. Just absolutely punishes people who can least afford it. And it's affordability does not end when you hand over the keys, right? You got to be able to stay in that home. So again, anything I can do online or offline, happy to help.
Thanks. So just to bring this to an actionable thing, sounds like, now I don't think BHP controls the Greenbelt Alliance membership list. So that's probably an internal conversation, but.
That's right. Yeah, that's up for GBA board to decide.
You'll sort that out, but would the Blue Horizons project like to be on a letter co-authored with CCL? And it sounds like Ben, would you be willing to be the technical advisor on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, so I propose that Blue Horizons project lend their name, and if Greenbelt Alliance would like to be on that op-ed. And I'm going to also suggest that we recruit a social justice organization based on the energy burden impacts and find them. So there'll be an op-ed with potentially 3 authors. Do you think Don would be open to that, Steffi?
I don't know. You'll have to ask him.
Okay, so if not, then maybe BHP would do it with a social justice organization. Then there'll be multiples, which is never bad, right?
Send it to the Blue Horizons project email list though, as well, or do you feel that's not necessary?
I'm not sure what you mean, honestly.
The email asking people to make comments.
No. What is the Blue Horizons list? Like the staff, the roster of like people who participate in the Blue Horizons project? I don't think we have a member list.
We have a mailing list that Summer keeps up for Blue Horizons, right, Summer?
Oh, just the newsletter.
The newsletter for people who've signed up for that newsletter. And as well as the board and staff, I guess. I mean.
Okay, sorry, I didn't even, good to know. All right, so BHP, the motion would be to co-author an op-ed and send an alert to our
mailing list.
All in favor?
Aye.
Maggie, was that you?
That's Ben.
Okay, Ben, sorry, it broke up. I didn't know. Okay, I don't know if Maggie's still on the phone. I think
Maggie's not on the phone.
Oh, okay. Any opposed? All right, add it to our to-do list. I'm gonna try to loop around with Ben and Don and recruit a social justice organization.
And Kim, real quick, Ben, do you have a sense on the timing of this? When do we need to have this? I know ASAP, of course, but is this going to come to the floor anytime soon? And is the legislation kind of like superseding any kind of building code council discussion about residential energy efficiency?
Nope. I get to spend my whole day tomorrow talking to these folks about it again.
Okay.
So we're moving forward under the assumption that the council still has its constitutionally vested authority.
Yes.
But yes, as far as how these bills are moving through the House, they are moving with a lot of momentum. So there've already been 2 committee votes for House 488, and it's only like a week old. So
okay.
They're really pushing it. So yeah, the answer is as soon as possible, unfortunately.
So then would it be advantageous for us to both send communication to the Building Code Council and the legislature?
We can. I can go into more detail about when certain portions of certain codes are open to public comment, because that gets a little complicated. But right now, that is not the immediate concern because that public comment would occur in June and September.
Okay. All right. So let's focus now on what I'm hearing you say is focus now on the legislation, trying to kill that, and then there'll be additional time for comments for the Building Code Council energy efficiency portions.
Yeah, and I think the sentiment basically will largely be the same, whether to the legislature or to the council, with the exception that the legislature also has, you know, sort of the additional comment of, hey, like checks and balances, guys. You know. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
But there's also a deadline, April 17th. Steffi, what's that deadline on the 17th?
It's to make comments, to submit your comments by. And in the email, I guess Summer's gonna put this in the minutes, the email that was drafted with the contact person for those comments, and then how to find out who your legislator is. So giving people direction on how and where to send to.
Sorry, Ben, Ben just said that the comment period is different. Is the 17th deadline for the legislation?
So it's kind of complicated. There's an energy code that has a residential and commercial chapters. There's also a residential code that is supposed to annex the residential chapter from the energy code, the plumbing code, the mechanical code, etc. The energy code is open for comments, although the residential portion of the energy code isn't actually the language that is legally binding. It's the annexed language that goes into the residential code that's legally binding. You can write a letter of support for the energy code, like in general, but the language that will actually affect construction is in the residential code. The residential code, except for that language, is going through the process. Its public comment will be in June, and specific to the residential energy portion in September. But yes, letters to generally support the energy code are still being received, and they're certainly welcome. You know, that's just sort of, that's a philosophical support, or the technical support has been carved out because of, you know, the political machinations.
Okay.
But would you say the 17th is a good date in general, or are you saying there's a different date?
I think it's perfect. It's a perfectly good date to let the council know that there is support. And I think the way I would phrase it is that everybody is trying to just bring all of the codes forward. We're not going to pick and choose. We're just going to try to make everything newer technology, safer, healthier, more efficient. And instead of saying, yes, we want better plumbing, but we don't care about having safer, you know, electrical systems or whatever. That's sort of the messaging, I think, that that would help for specifically this comment period on the energy code, is to say, to bring it forward with everything else.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Just so we're clear, who's going to be GBA staff who support the BHP are going to be working on the action alert and getting that out the door. Is that right? Great. I appreciate it. I thought about moving that agenda item to new business and it's moving through the legislature quickly, so it became more of a discussion. I hope that those of you who are part of other organizations take that information back to your groups. Does the technology subcommittee have anything they need to report?
We didn't meet this month either.
Cool. Does the community engagement committee, I think there was a link to the engagement plan in the agenda. So that's out for review. Summer, anything else from the community engagement committee?
We are going to talk about the logo at the next meeting, so be thinking of that. But otherwise, the engagement plan is linked for your viewing. If you have any comments, just add it as a comment or email me or Micah, please.
Cool. There's one announcement, and this is specifically for the residents and business owners that are in the city of Asheville. If you could take the plastic survey, they're trying to sort out how to implement the plastics resolution. If you are not a city of Asheville resident, don't take the survey. Or if you don't own a business in the city of Asheville, don't take the survey. Okay, we added one item to our agenda that hasn't been on here before, and it's the review of the action items. Hannah, sorry to spring this on you. Thank you for taking notes today. Can you run through what we said we were going to do and who said they were going to do it? Is it possible?
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
If it's not possible, this is something we're going to do going forward and we don't have to do it. But that's our goal, is to pull out the action items and identify who's going to do it at each meeting. And that'll be nice.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm reading through. Some of it's not relevant.
That's okay.
I don't know who, I'm sorry, I didn't get who's doing this, following up with the professor at UNCA and the environmental club to connect. Okay, David, thank you. And then sorry, now I'm just looking through the feedback process and grind fest.
While she's
I'm
looking,
gonna take
can
public
I?
comment. Hannah, I'm going to take
Okay.
public comment and come back. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, public comment. Thank you, members of the public, for joining. Anything you would like to say?
We had some questions in the chat earlier, and one was when and how is it appropriate to give feedback on staff updates?
That's great. Is it a public comment or is it from a BHPCC member?
It was from Clary.
Okay. I think I should have paused at the time to ask if anyone had any feedback on the staff updates. Clary, would you like to do that now?
Have folks heard that there's a new net metering policy that was just approved to be implemented July 1st? So it will affect the neighbor to neighbor projects. It'll affect them in terms of how valuable solar is. So the more customers that we can get in the process ahead of July 1st, the better. I don't know if there's a way to do an additional push. And we don't have to have them installed by then. We just have to have their interconnection approval with Duke. So we could even get people going on that, even if they aren't qualified yet.
Okay, that's really good to know.
Oh, so Clary said this, so the whole piece we were talking about last year about net metering and everything, so that did go through and Duke did get their way.
So there were like
They got it
4
all.
or 5 parts that were bad for solar. And then
Yeah.
one was an actual incentive and they approved all but the one good one.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
It's happening.
Clary, isn't there a low income carve out of some kind in the legislation?
There is, and I don't understand it yet.
But I mean, I think we need to look at that low income provision before we decide whether we have an immediate emergency on neighbor to neighbor solar.
That's a great point.
I did see it, but I forgot what it was.
That's a great point.
Something.
Also, Claire, just to clarify, if they're in before July 1st, are they sort of grandfathered into the older terms?
Yes. Yes, for a time. All of us with solar will be affected eventually, but more protected.
The BHP
Protected till
did look-
2027.
Yeah, we did
2027.
look at this policy last year.
I would make a point on the solar for everybody, is that everybody who has solar and is getting solar, other than this change, is getting a raise because Duke is increasing their rates.
Yeah, but that's not going to make up for all the rest of it.
I'm going to suggest, do you think that there needs to be a meeting of neighbor to neighbor solar? What time frame do you think we need to have that meeting?
I feel like staff to speak to that one based on.
Yeah. Well, let's just say we're going to schedule that offline, right? Summer, does that sound good? Okay. All right. Thank you for piping in with that. if there's ever things like this that seem real urgent, feel free to, I'll move things around on the agenda for you too. No worries. And we can always pull neighbor to neighbor back or any staff written update back to the agenda. All right, any other public comment?
Can I add one last thing? Sorry, I know we're going over it, but just as another sort of building relationships and moving forward, another thing that Dr. Hackett was talking about was if we're inviting folks from diverse communities to come to our things, we should also make every effort that we can to go to events they're hosting. So probably just another plug why we should go to Grindfest and why, if folks are available, that would be a really good one just to start. And then there's a bunch of other things we should try to attend.
Yes. Second. Okay, we're gonna come back to the action items. Hannah, you ready?
Yeah, so the only other one that I really have here is that GBA staff here will be working on the action alert for House Bill 488.
Michelle's gonna follow up with Ben and Don about an op-ed that's gonna be authored by the BHP as well.
Okay.
And then last one, Summer's gonna schedule a neighbor
Yeah.
meeting with Clary and the other folks on that committee pronto.
Yep, and I'll look up what that low income component is.
Clary's gonna do some research. All right. I appreciate you all. Thank you for your time. Thanks for staying a little over.
Can I say just one quick thing?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, y'all. I should have said this before my GSA presentation, and I apologize for that, but I should disclose.
Wait, I'm gonna time. Hannah, this needs to be in the minutes, okay? And proceed.
Thanks. So yeah, with my work as a project manager for Pine Gate Renewables, there is a potential that a GSA contract in Buncombe County would potentially get signed with Pine Gate. We are the only utility scale solar developer headquartered in Asheville. So yeah, just flagging that as a potential conflict of interest. Of course, if it ever came to that point, I'd be happy to recuse myself, but just wanted to flag that, given my familiarity with the program, I hope I can still contribute in that capacity, but do want to note the potential conflict of interest there.
Thank you. Does anybody, I'm going to call one last call for a public comment or general comment, and then we're going to sign off.
This isn't a public comment, but I wonder if I could get Summer to stay on for just a minute or two after everybody else goes away. I saw some comments about the formatting on my presentation, and I think I know what happened, but I want to learn something.
Cool. Yep. And if anybody wants to go back to those, they were distributed as a PDF. So, and Summer did drop it in the chat. So that's, thank you, Dave, again for that presentation. All right. Bye. I'll go enjoy some of the sunshine.
Thanks, y'all.